their in-game attention topside.
Yeah, so already right now, you can see CLG is already opting for the Elise, which is usually banned. And I think already right now, we're going to see a different CLG. We're going to have a lot more fighting in the early game. And I think Contractz as a player excels a lot in these kind of champions. He likes to make random stuff happening in the early game. Sometimes he ints, but usually it's pretty good. And that's what I like to see from him.
Do you think that's really important for CLG considering the way that Blaber likes to play as well and wanting to make those early game action happen?
Yes, in a way, but when I think of Blaber, he's a very flexible player. I think he's fine with taking a bit of a backseat, but he just likes to be the guy to start the fights, but I'm sure he knows to not fight the Elise early game if he can.
All right, they grabbed the Lee Sin Elise, so very different jungle matchup from the Wukong Maokai game 1. Already looking pretty scrappy if they actually decide to break up the... Oh, they're not doing it. I thought for a second they were going to break up the Lucian Nami lane.
Yeah, it's always makes the draft interesting when you see that happen, but there's very few teams who do that. I think TL did it this season.
Yeah, they ran a Sona.
Yeah, not many teams like doing that.
What do you think of the fact that we're still continuing to see Lucian and then, the Lucian Nami combo? You just got so many standard bot 2v2s that are continuing to be prevalent within the way it's drafted.
I mean, personally, I hate playing as Lucian Nami because you just get one shot. But it is very strong in the meta, so I guess that's why we see it.
Bot lanes locked in for both CLG and Cloud9 supports as well, and jungle. So it's the solo lanes this time around that are left open. And Jensen, I feel like that's what you were calling for, right? With CLG trying to wait later into the draft to see what they can bring into the power for someone like Dhokla.
Yeah, I'm curious. We see C9 already banned the Yone, so I'm afraid we might go back to tank top from CLG, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I think this game already, when C9 chose the Lee Sin, there's going to be a lot of fighting around mid. They're probably going to look to counter pick mid and pick like a... I guess they banned LeBlanc, so I'm expecting a Syndra from C9.
I was about to ask where you think you're going to go because you have to protect one of your 2 lanes unless you draft a flex on 4 for both those lanes, and then you're going to get counterpicked somewhere against that. So if you were mid laner, you're saying you're like, give me the Syndra, I'll just play whatever matchup comes my way.
Oh, if I'm mid here, I'm saying give me last pick.
Yeah. If you're drafting for the player, you're giving him Syndra, but if you're the one in the chair, you're...
No. I think they're going to 5-pick Syndra, because it's not CLG's option, because you don't want to play Elise Syndra together, because it's too heavy AP. But combined with Lee Sin, I think having something like the Syndra is pretty good. I don't know. I'm curious to see what C9 decides to pick here on 4 with all these bans.
And another ban towards that mid position from CLG to whittle down the options we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, Ksante, an option for Fudge, has played a lot. Oftentimes, people pick it more in reaction to tanks than doing it blind. So we'll see if this gives an option for Dhokla to play a specific counter pick into it.
Yeah, here comes the Vayne top. Oh, really?
Yeah, that would be one to go for game 2 in a best of 5.
I'd respect it, but I feel like it's
you would not want your top laner doing that in a series.
Probably not, no.
We've seen a bit of it. Dhokla, I know that he was playing a lot against Viper, for instance. That was bringing out the Vayne top a season or so ago, but probably not the look that we're seeing here today. CLG bringing out Jayce as their 4th pick.
Yeah, and I think this Jayce could go either mid or top. Probably mid, to be honest, unless they have something else cooking up. But usually with Elise, you want to play an AD mid if possible.
I've seen a lot of just, Jayce mid recently. Blind feels like one of the strongest laners that you can just kind of grab and be generally good in. Is that what attracts most mid laners to the Jayce pick?
It's mostly just because when you have like Elise or Gragas, you just want them to be solo AP. And Jayce as a pick is pretty strong on its own, and it scales pretty well. So it's just a safe pick to go for.
And now with Gwen getting locked in, then it does look likely to be having that Jayce flex over towards the mid position.
We'll have to see what they want to pick into it. EMENES obviously has a preference for assets, but Kennen mid. Here you go. Break down the Kennen
mid? Or is it Kennen top?
You think they're going the Ksante mid again? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say Ksante against Jayce, Kennen against...
Teams of the year. Let's find out if Cloud9 can go ahead and pull ahead with a 2-0 lead or a CLG even out the tables. Now on blue side, and a different level of power brought through. The entirety of Cloud9 making their way over towards top.
Not too uncommon to see some level 1 rushes to lane. C9 opting for top. CLG spreading out to kind of a point defense to get an early ward out to see where Blaber is going to go. I assume that's something that's pretty high priority when you're playing against Blaber to figure out where he's starting his jungle clear. Oh!
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
over the wall, Dhokla is followed, and that is a swift, clean woo, exit from Dhokla.
Blaber?
Cloud9 said, nope.
Yeah, I guess Blaber didn't want to kill him.
Started E, so he didn't have a Q for the follow, so once the ghost starts, he just doesn't want to keep going.
I feel like Blaber canceled an auto there, but I could be wrong.
That was one way to set things off. I wonder if the coaches have anything to say about it. We've got Jat standing on by.
Thank you. I'm here with CLG's coach, Ksante. A little bit of fireworks at level 1, but safe. 2 flashes for run, good. But I wanted to ask you overall how you felt like the draft played out.
I'm pretty happy with how the drafts have been going today so far. I think last game we obviously had a lot of options. There was a little bit of shakiness and we messed up some of our setups. But in this game, I think that we have seen all these champions that they played before, knew that they were going to take Lucian into our Elise, but it didn't they didn't really handle the pressure of Elise the last time that we played it, or we've consistently had a lot of good results on it. So this game we just need to get advantages 2v2 through mid jungle or through bot lane, and definitely confident in Dhokla's Gwen as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted a quick question about the Ksante flex pick. It is something they've done before, but it definitely threw us for a little bit of a loop when you see it locked in. Were you expecting the flex and you needed to draft with the Gwen and Jayce knowing either could play Ksante?
Yeah, so we talked about certain ways that we could play against this Ksante specifically in the first couple of minutes of the game, but I watched a lot of EMENES' stream, watch him play Ksante in addition to just what he played on stage, and so I think that it's not going to be an easy game for them to play out. I think he's a lot more comfortable on the Yone and other stuff. But yeah, just have to see. It's exciting drafts from C9 as usual. So.
All right, well, we'll see how it plays out. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Ksante recognizing the time spent watching EMENES not just on stage, but at home when streaming. Jensen, what do you make of his debut here in the LCS and time on Cloud9 thus far?
I mean, his first game was obviously very rough, but I think he's shown why C9 chose to start him. I think he's very good mechanically, and he's a very aggressive player, so he's very fun to watch. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of him play.
So we see a gank coming in potentially for the Elise top side into Jayce. Jayce into Kennen is something that we've seen a little bit more often, and it can go pretty swingy either way if one team can get a massive lead.
Yeah, and I think another thing is C9 opted to, CLG opted to swap the Gwen mid, and I think it's because he doesn't want to lane against the Kennen early on, so I think CLG have more favorable matchups as well.
And CLG was opting into an attempt to dive there, had to flash away though, because Blaber also in the vicinity. EMENES making his way towards the top side, but the first blood being drawn away by Fudge. Talking about the importance of pushing the advantage of this lane one direction or another, and it's kind of been cleared out now.
Oh boy, there was a nice idea by CLG there, but they had no idea that Blaber had wrapped around early, left his blue buff up, so they had the initial vision on him starting on red buff, so they think that there's no contest with this dive coming in. Even if EMENES like TP's in, you can always match it. But there, it was just a really heads-up play by Blaber to know that that gank was coming in topside.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, Blaber kind of expected this to come, and he planned his jungle route around it, and yeah, well done to him.
The thing is, when you're looking at CLG, you want to see these early plays happening.
Yeah, I think this was just a bit of a Doom situation. Once Contractz is alone under the turret here, he just goes spider form for the move speed to be like, oh god, I gotta run out from turret range. There's just no real way to fight it after they had to take that much damage just escaping. Plus, EMENES has a small inside track to get up here faster.
So the quickness of the first blood dropping over towards the Cloud9 side of Fudge on this Kennen, but we'll have to see how CLG end up responding. So much emphasis on how Contractz can make plays on this pick.
So this is one of those games where both solo lanes end up swapping all the time. Jensen, you've had a really long career. What do you make of these situations? Do you prefer to just lock into one of your lanes and try to just stay there and push as much as you can, or do you like chasing people around the map?
Oh man, I hate this.
I knew you would, man.
I mean, obviously, if you're the one hunting for a certain matchup, it feels better. But if you're playing like a bad matchup and there's this guy you have to keep avoiding, it's so painful. Because if they do it right, it's really hard to play around it because they're usually ahead in tempo as well. But sometimes you got to do it.
Oh, Blaber was coming in for the play, but Contractz sees him out upon bush entry, flashes over the wall. Things were looking dangerous for Luger if that play were to continue, but the offset by the enemy jungler.
Nice play by Contractz, who forced Blaber back, kills his flash, but looks like we're getting a bit of a tri-lane here.
Just a little bit, but doesn't everybody in their lane want their jungler with them at all times, Jensen?
Oh, of course. This is just, in NA, we like Aram more, but for some reason they all went bot lane.
The bot lane's broken. They're always calling for their junglers the most, it feels like.
Always the bot lane is.
But off of that, CLG just wanting to usher the wave through as much as possible, using the pressure of Contractz' presence to offset Blaber as well.
Yep, so they are able to escort that wave in, get the reset for the Zeri Lulu early on. Not too bad for them. From here, what do you think is the most important lane for these junglers to try and influence? Because they're running all over the map. If you were like, this is the person I want to get head, obviously it's Zeri for CLG side, but for C9, what do you think their priority should be in the early game?
I think when you have Lucian and Nami, you typically want to make sure that they stay ahead of the curve against Zeri, because everyone knows when Zeri is ahead how much of a pain Zeri is, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure the Lucian is ahead and just try to stack their early objectives, drag and herald as much as possible without letting this Zeri scale for free.
That's interesting, because with how much focus there is on these counter picks and running across the map and trying to get these assignments, it kind of pulls your attention away from the bot lane. But you're saying for both teams, it's actually maybe a little bit more about the bot lane?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix, right? Because Lucian and Nami should win lane on their own right, so you just want to make sure you match the Elise as much as possible to not let her get advantages, because I think C9 is happy as long as their lanes can play 1v1 or 2v2. So Blaber's job is just to make sure that that happens and he doesn't let Elise like snowball one of the lanes.
Now, Contractz at risk of running into Blaber and EMENES in the river side, so Blaber continuing to keep up that ideology that you're pointing out, Jensen, of keeping tabs on Contractz and how he can affect these lanes. But kind of on that point, bringing so much pressure over to the bot side, it feels like something that we have seen time and time again is the attempt from Luger to go on forward on Zven, sidesteps the Aqua Prism, gets a slice into the fish's eye, taking down Zven, CLG out on top in the 2v2.
This is exactly what Jensen was talking about, wanting to stay ahead of the Zeri Lulu. The fact that they're able to get that all in. The early 6 from Luger, Berserker was still 5, Nami was still 5, so just seeing that they had that XP differential.
Yeah, you hate to see it. Lulu, Zeri winning lane, not a good look.
Where did that start? Because you say it, Zven says it all the time. Where did the not a good look originate?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I'm not even sure where it came from. There's so much gamer lingo that you just don't know where it originated
It just came out of nowhere, yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things where you just all end up saying the same 5 phrases when you're around the same people all the time.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
Some of them more fun than others, but there's definitely a lot of fun to be had when you're picking up the Rift Herald over for Cloud9. Contractz and Palafox posturing with some presence from that bot lane starting to get unlocked from the CLG side.
Yeah, nice little window by C9 there. They've been very good about their neutral objectives setups this entire series and all year, really, about finding these windows to sneak them away. After that all in the bot side, just felt like they got back on the map a little bit faster.
Yeah, so definitely not too bloody just yet. Kill postured for both of these teams. Dragon spawned up, but nobody ready for the taking, kind of because that bot lane being left to their own. If you were looking over on the side of Cloud9, though, and that bot lane and how they did just dish that kill over into Luger's pocket, how worried are you in your presence in the lane, and how much of a more tempered approach are you taking?
I mean, luckily it was Nami who died, so it's not the end of the world, but you always hate to see Zeri getting kills.
And you hate to see your mid laner fall. Now, if you're at Cloud9, the presence from Contractz being had for CLG. So really keeping up the plays that Contractz can make over on the CLG side.
Yeah, really nice play there by Contractz. You heard Coach Ksante talking about how he's done a good job on the Elise himself, as well as into C9, able to make a nice kill there. Gold lead even, hitting into 10 minutes. They still have the Rift Herald, of course, for C9 side. Getting a little aggressive in the bot lane with Blaber wrapping around.
The culling thrown on out. Blaber gets the kick onto Luger, and the bubble up and down into the grave he goes. Cloud9 kill off the CLG bot laner and make their movement over into the river.
Yeah, unfortunately a little too over-aggressive from Luger there. I think he knew Lucian was around as well, but he thought he had the backup of Elise, but Elise was a bit too far, unfortunately, and that's going to be costly because now C9 gets the dragon.
Yeah, they give the dragon up, lost his barrier as well, I think, thinking that he could bait it, like you said, with that extra bit of defense. Also, did get the TP out of EMENES, so there will be a small TP advantage for the side of CLG in the coming minutes. But game lead a little bit in C9's favor. We haven't really talked about scaling because there's been so much focus on these lanes and matchups and junglers. Who do you actually favor going mid to late should the gold lead be even?
I think CLG scaling is a bit better, but it's hard to say exactly because I think they just have different win condition. C9 needs to be able to get a flank and get on the backline, and they have a lot of tools with the Elise and the Kennen, so if they do get the right setup, they can definitely make something happen too.
I would 100%, if it was me, prefer to be on the C9 side because CLG's comp is so squishy. There's really no frontline that you have other than like Gwen is immune in a lot of ways, and whoever Zeri decides to ult. It does feel like C9 have more team fighting tools with like the Kennen lockdown. If he ever finds a good flank, you can just kind of blow a bunch of people up. But you're saying like if they find the flank, CLG has a lot more scaling potential to like 1v1 carry fights.
Yeah, if it's like front to back, but like you said, if the Kennen does get like on top of many people, he's gonna kind of destroy the whole game.
Yeah.
Where CLG are looking at a lot of the individual players and how they perform on these picks. I mean, Ksante was talking about having confidence in Dhokla on this Gwen. You were looking for something of a CLG special, the Yone, for instance, which did get banned out. Do you hold some of that same confidence in the Gwen for Dhokla?
Yeah, I think Gwen and Yone is played kind of similar with how you play the side lane and stuff, so I think this fits CLG style pretty well, and this is what Dhokla is pretty good at usually.
I think the lane swap has obviously affected both the melee matchups. The fact that Gwen, 90-ish CS, EMENES at 95, both of them down 10 to 15 from their opponent laners. I feel like that probably favors the Ksante, not as important to get far ahead. So this probably feels like pretty good from the C9 perspective that the Gwen is a little bit further behind than she would normally be.
Yeah, I agree, because it does feel like the Gwen needs to be ahead of the Kennen to be able to like create that threat on the side lane later on, but it's going to be tough this time.
Oh, Contractz saw that Blaber was coming. The Wild Growth activated, culling over the wall. No lives lost just yet, but a big blast onto Blaber. Contractz first to fall, and now the Rift Herald getting dropped down by Cloud9's side. With 4 present, they hope to get this push up for a crash.
Yeah, that was a nice little pick off there. Contractz tried to jump the play, but the rest of C9 had an extra member coming in from behind. Palafox too slow to rotate. He actually came down here to defend the push rather than get the free shove on mid lane. I thought he was going to just try and answer with plates. A selfless player he is. I don't know if, Jensen, you're in that position, you roam? Yeah?
No, usually not, no. Rather just stay lane. Can get some plates, it's better, right?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Yeah.
So now ended up losing out on a little bit of that time, but made it back to lane so Palafox can continue up the shove. And some of the poke onto Poome and Luger puts them in some danger against Berserker and Zven if they didn't have Contractz here for the assist if needed.
Yeah, right now Berserker and Zven could probably kill them, but there's a bit of a jungle gap going on.
Oh, ult up top, Fudge in the 1v1 with Dhokla. Needlework coming through, but Dhokla losing out to Fudge, showing a new look on the Kennen.
Oh boy, just things starting to come off the wheels a little bit there. I'm not quite sure how Dhokla got locked up underneath the turret with the Kennen ultimate. You know, he did have flash, maybe Fudge just came out of nowhere and surprised him, but gets that solo kill top side, gets that pressure, the bot side going in favor of C9 as well. This gold lead gonna start ballooning pretty quickly here.
Yeah, this is definitely not a good look if you're CLG. They're kind of just falling behind everywhere, and they're gonna start bleeding more and more slowly unless they can find a creative angle.
Oh, just greeted out for the demolish proc. No! Yeah. You hate to see it.
Yeah, this is not ideal.
So falling at the end there to Fudge, which means some time left alone to farm up and the like, but CLG, they are starting to fall behind across all the lanes, and you were mentioning, Jensen, that you felt that they did have some decent scaling options. Do you think they still have windows to be able to play into their advantages?
I mean, they obviously have the Zeri scaling still, right? But when Gwen falls behind against the Kennen, it's going to be very hard to play the side lane, and if they can't play the side lane, it's going to be really hard around the objectives because they're just going to get flanked, and if C9 can flank with this comp, it's going to be very hard for CLG to play team fights.
Now Cloud9 keeping their focus on the objective, start up the second Rift Herald of this game, but CLG look like they do want to get a bit of a contest. Some decent poke onto Zven on the Nami, going to be pretty squishy, but keeping connected.
Yeah, CLG actually contesting this a little bit despite the fact that C9 should be stronger at this point in the game. The one item power spikes completed for Lucian Nami at 15 minutes is when they're almost at their most deadly, when they can just Gale Force on top of you with the Imperial Mandate. But looks like CLG don't want to let this Rift Herald go for free.
Yeah, I think fighting this Herald it's going to be very tough for CLG. Like you said, C9 have reached their spikes right now, so it's going to be very hard.
Already throwing out the damage, seeing Lucian's did a lot with the culling to get a chunk onto Contractz, so more difficult for him to step up to this Rift Herald tidal wave to zone off as well. So Cloud9, they don't need to get the kills, just using their ultimates to be able to zone off CLG.
Mission accomplished. I'm surprised that they were able to get that one. The fact that the Herald reset came at basically the worst possible time for C9 as they were trying to exit out. They end up losing that one. Dhokla got the shove in the bot wave. Small win there for CLG.
Yeah, pretty much best case scenario for them.
So now Cloud9, since they couldn't make the play happen over on Rift Herald, bring their attention over towards this Dragon. They had previously stacked up the first, so this would be second for the red side. But I think you do have to commend CLG for even at points in time when they are down in itemization and not as strong holding up against Cloud9, being able to push against them and really peel them off, and now grabbing this Rift Herald for themselves.
Yeah, they do end up trading the Herald for the Dragon, which is probably best case for them given the current situation of the game. I think right now they just need a bit more of time, get some items going, and then maybe they can start fighting again. Yeah,
they also grabbed turret topside, so a small trade up in CLG's favor. They're able to get the gold lead back to neutral. Of course, the Dragon, like you said, did go down for C9. They're continuing that stacking, which they always seem to be doing quite well. Looking like they're pretty good, but CLG, I think, more resilient than a lot of people might have expected heading into this series. It's looking really close.
Do you feel, Jensen, just when interacting with the players of CLG, you know, they've kind of externally had this identity, they're scrappy, and when they're really on it, they really snowball with their energy. Is that a feeling that you get just when talking with them, kind of being this scrappy team that's often an underdog?
I mean, to be honest, I don't really talk to the CLG players much. Not for any particular reason.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Jensen hates CLG!
But, I mean, it is kind of like their style, right? They like to be very scrappy and just take fights whenever they can, and it's fun to watch.
Did you ever feel like that worked for you during your career? You know, you had a lot of times where you were the favorite in North America, obviously, but then when you went internationally, slept on a lot of times, but still able to punch above your weight in a lot of people's eyes. Like, did the underdog mindset ever, like, set you free, set you loose to just play crazy?
I think being the underdog is a nice feeling. You feel like there's less pressure, and even if you mess up or you lose, people kind of expected it. So it's definitely nicer than, you know, when everyone thinks like, oh yeah, they're gonna win for sure. Then there's like a lot more pressure.
Do you ever get like the invincible feeling though when you're on the other side of it? Like what you've had some dominant years during your Team Liquid years where it was like, oh, no one can stop us. Do you ever just, does that kind of feeling of being this juggernaut come through, or do you always prefer to kind of be underdog?
I think if you're definitely like way above the rest of the teams, it's like a very nice feeling, but there's not many teams that it happens for. But in 2019 until, we did kind of feel that way, I think. And
it kind of looked that way.
It was a nice feeling, but then next year, you know, reality hit and back to ninth place.
Don't talk about that split.
Yeah, we'll forget that one.
Put it in the history bank, that's all. I mean, Cloud9, while being the #1 seed going into playoffs, did have to play a tiebreaker for that. There were different teams that had kind of separate swings of when they were strong versus not strong. I know it does seem like you still do talk with the Cloud9 fellas that you were playing with previously. How do you feel that they are in terms of their sentiment of how they've been playing this year?
I mean, I haven't really asked them how, you know, they feel like they've been playing, but I think, strangely enough, I think the 4 players are playing better than they were last year. I'm a bit disappointed to see that.
Yeah, they didn't carry quite as hard with you.
I feel like they didn't play as good when I was on the team.
Did you ever watch back the season kickoff event, by the way?
No.
No.
You should at some point look back at that. I don't know, they were trolling you really hard that whole time. Anytime Zven was on the mic. Or,
oh, really?
Yeah, Fudge. They were all trolling you. I don't know why.
That's why, Jensen, when we saw Fudge, we promised in the hallway that this was just going to be a trash on Fudge the whole time.
Oh, you're right,
This is your chance to get him back.
The thing is, this game, I can't really say much about Fudge. He's playing a bit too well, and he got a solo kill, unfortunately, so...
So this is where you have the power of the caster.
Oh, I have the caster first? Okay,
yeah. So keep
playing so good.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. We'll get him.
So good on the Ken, doing great, and will continue to do so expertly for the entirety of the game.
Of course, and the series.
There's no way C9 loses. Their comp's so much better. Their players are so much better.
But on a serious note, I would be very impressed if they managed to lose this game, but anything can happen, right?
You would be impressed if C9 managed to lose it? Yeah. Oh, boy.
But it's funny because that can work both ways. Does CLG impress you for winning, or does Cloud9 impress you for managing to lose?
C9.
Right.
If they manage to lose, it's impressive.
Insane calling out a Berserker there. Almost kills Poome does get the heal out instead of the ultimate with the dragon spawning 50 seconds. Should get the reset back up in time, but still utilizing first strike, grabbing a nice little chunk of gold. Anytime you can pull off a combo like that, you're scaling.
Exactly.
That gold's been pretty stable for some time since CLG ripping back some of the plays. Palafox over on the bot side getting poked out a bit, but we are a bit over 30 seconds until that next dragon spawns. Cloud9 having previously stacked 2 of them, looking for the aggressive play ahead of the objective, throws down the tidal wave to zone off Contractz.
Yeah, a bit of miscoordination there on the side of C9. Not sure if they wanted to go all in on that play or not. It means that now their bot lane are going to be completely without ultimates. Blaber as well, no ult for this next fight that's coming up.
Yeah, we have Dragon coming up soon, so I guess we'll see if CLG chooses to fight it. I think if they do, they're probably just gonna get aced, but maybe they can find something.
Do you think it's just doomed at this point, or is there like some item power spikes you're waiting for CLG to hit before they're ready to contest objectives?
I mean, right now, actually, like if you look at the items, CLG are probably in the best spot they will get to. So they probably should fight it, but it's going to be very hard once C9 has to set up, and you know they have the river control, so it's very hard to walk into them. But maybe they can make something happen. Yeah, the Lucian hitting pretty hard.
Blaber sticking to the dragon for now, and CLG look like they are in the midst of that decision making. How do we push in? Maybe a nice blast to chunk down Berserker and Zven is one way to do it, but the teleport, the immediate stun up from CLG as soon as EMENES gets in here, gets polymorphed as well. There's the dragon going down in Cloud9's favor. Flash away from EMENES. The wild growth on top of Dhokla throwing down the needlework does not connect for kills.
I think you just feel how desperate CLG was to Jensen's point there about the fact that this was going to be one of their best windows. They were desperate to find a cleanup kill. Unfortunately, Dhokla used his Q a little bit too soon as EMENES came in, so even though Contractz went into the cocoon, he had already used all his snips up. They might have been timing out anyways, and so he waited as long as he could, I'm not quite sure, but not able to kill EMENES. That teleport distracted them long enough to grab that dragon and get out of there.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit of a questionable TP, but it worked out. C9 got the dragon and got out. It seemed like they didn't really want to fight them, and they just wanted to get the dragon and dip, and that's what they did.
Drawing some of the attention off of that TP to secure the objective that they were looking for the whole time. So 3 of them stacked up for Cloud9, 22.5 minutes. Pulling throw now to get a decent amount of damage into Luger. You can see the work of the Immortal Shield bolt coming into effect there. Cloud9 now get to have an opportunity to secure vision around this top side. I mean, also drawing attention to what Fudge was able to do prior, getting that bot lane turret down ahead of that dragon. Feels like he's been very effective in his pressure.
Yeah, Fudge has looked really good. I think CLG doing their best to answer back. They get another turret. The gold lead's close. The fights have been close, but I think that if there's one thing that seems to be going C9's way over the course of the series, it is their neutral objectives and the setups around them. There were a couple fights that CLG has won around them, but for the most part, C9's there first. They're there with vision, and they're either able to pick a fight that they like or just focus down the objective and try and get out of there.
Yeah, and as we can see right now, Dhokla is actually making this split pushing working quite a bit. He just took the tier 2 turret, so he's going to be picking up a lot of gold here and pick up his second item. So maybe he can make something happen soon.
I mean, it feels... I hope he can, but split pushing has felt doomed for the last couple of seasons. I know that there was the teleport into the middle of the base to end it there, but that's not quite the same as like sitting in a side lane and trying to win just through split push.
Yeah.
It's been rough for top laners for a little bit.
It has. It's all about the bot laners.
But I mean, looking at the game kind of from that general bird's eye lens again, CLG, they managed to swing a little bit of the gold back. They're keeping up that turret pressure. Do you have more confidence in them now than you did maybe moments ago when they were just trying to hold off against those neutral objectives?
I mean, right now they're actually still pretty strong in the game if you look at the items. I think they can win a fight as long as they don't let Kennen hit like a massive ultimate on all of them.
Yeah, I mean, Kennen's pretty scary right now with Shadow Flame completed, Pen Boots as well. The fact that CLG is not a team comp that's going to be stacking any MR, they're all extremely squishy. If you ever clump up for and engage by Fudge, it's going to be lights out.
Yeah.
But if you can stay spaced away, you saw the poke that they were able to land on Berserker and Zven. That kind of made them think that they could take that dragon fight as well. It is a situation where they can land the poke on C9's side. They are relatively short range if you can see where they're coming from on the flanks from C9.
Keep an eye out for those flanks in the future, but if you are Cloud9 right now trying to make a play across mid, another throwing out from the ult from Berserker, targeted onto Poome, nothing quite found of it just yet.
Yeah, and if you look at Fudge, he's looking for TPs around the map pretty often, but Dhokla just keeps being annoying, pushing in the side lane, so it's very difficult for Fudge to actually leave the lane without giving up too much.
Berserker with all those cullings in the mid lane. First strike up to 535 gold printed in the mid lane. So even though it's not necessarily getting a ton of kills, they are getting a lot of control off of it, able to farm up some of that gold.
And still getting put in a very good position to have an impact later on in the game. I mean, we talked so much about how bot lane has been a focus throughout this year, throughout a lot of these series. How do you feel about that from mid lane and the way it's been developing?
I mean, I think we need more mid lane buffs.
Oh yeah?
80k nerfs. Yeah.
Shocker, I can't believe that's the perspective.
Non-biased.
Who would you buff?
Who would I buff?
Anivia, Orianna, Zillion.
Yes, those and the mage items.
It is true that the mage items have felt a little lackluster for a while. Roa coming back was nice, but doesn't feel like the champions that want to utilize it are very strong right now.
Yeah, it never feels fun that your best items are scaling items either, right? Like you want to be able to build the power and fight early, but right now the best mage items are scaling items.
And as you can see in this game, a very aggressive early game. Even though it hasn't been a ton of kills, it feels like they're fighting for every inch here. There's a lot of lane swaps, there's vision control, these kinds of things. CLG, as this Dragon's coming up, finally getting there first, it feels like, in this series, getting their vision control for this team comp that does have a lot of poke in it built up.
Teleport from EMENES, this time on the opposite bush, and CLG first to the party, but now trying to offset Cloud9 as they encroach upon the vicinity. Dhokla going in first. The response to the ultimate from Zven, now creating the distance. Blaber shielding himself away from the pressures that CLG are offering. Look at that damage into the backline. CLG is very similar to what we saw prior, being able to dish out so much damage even if you don't execute the kill. You push them off enough. So now CLG feel the agency to be able to start up this dragon. Berserker gets knocked down to 50% HP into stasis. Palafox goes, but they get so much damage onto EMENES in the process. Blaber taking away the dragon, though. It's sold for Cloud9. Can CLG get some more picks off the fight afterwards? Fudge, the subject of the attention of Contractz, but popping his own watch stopped in his tracks. CLG picking up some scrap, but they lose the objective, and now more lives, and now their jungler at that. Luger keeping the blood running in his veins, keeping his eyes onto Blaber, but Berserker zoning off. Oh, Dragon coming and getting set off.
Blaber's still up, he has smite. It's not up actually.
Trying to land these shots onto Blaber and keeping him at bay. Can he step into it? The zoning is still good and strong from CLG.
Oh my god, that was a clencher of a fight right there, but CLG are able to battle C9 back. They stopped the soul point from going down. Absolutely crazy fight there.
Yeah, this game has turned into a complete banger now. I mean, honestly, I thought this game was going to be very tough for CLG, but they are landing some very crucial poke and making it happen somehow.
Yeah, I think the initial poke made it so that they had to go to the spot lane. Zven was chunked out. He couldn't really contribute. Palafox tried to assassinate Berserker. I kind of like the aggressive mindset, but left him out to dry a little bit. He ends up going down, but Luger was free hitting almost this entire fight and did a very good job of playing the ranges, making sure that stopwatch doesn't land on top of him. He's able to just sit outside of it, and then zoning kind of 1v3 after Contractz goes down while Dhokla dozy-does with the dragon.
Yeah, and I think from a team fighting perspective, the way C9 needs it to happen is Kennen needs to be able to start the engage with like a flash ult or something. If CLG can just land their poke, then they can win these fights.
I also have to give a bit of a head tap to Dhokla that started that, just popping the ghost and kind of running C9 down and forcing them into that corridor for that poke to land. He was able to contribute quite a bit there, even though it seemed like the Luger show towards the tail end of it.
Ooh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that damage.
The Luger show.
The Zeri show, perhaps?
Yeah.
All right. That was a big major dance around from CLG and Cloud9, but CLG breaking that momentum from Cloud9 across the dragon. And I mean, we were talking so much about Dhokla and how he is able to be comfortable on this Gwen pick and why it's difficult to have the impact on the side lanes, but here, starting that off nicely.
Yeah, and it's like Mark mentioned earlier, I think when it comes to team fighting, when Dhokla plays these picks, he's very good at creating space and starting the fight, making it very difficult for the opponent to walk in.
Ooh, touch and go there for a second. Not sure if they were going to face check there. For CLG here, what's your game plan now that you've kind of gotten control of this game a little bit? Feels like they have managed to get the map control back in their favor, but they are a very squishy team. It's kind of hard to do this force onto Baron. They look like they're going to maybe try it, but how would you feel for them?
I guess they're just starting the Baron. I think they need to have the setup and just hit some poke, and then once the poke hits, they can start the fight.
Looking for that poke right now. Luger into it, ultimate aghast, and EMENES now taking so much damage. Backs off under the turret. Cloud9 zoned out again by CLG.
Yeah, like Jensen was just saying, I guess you're just starting it to bait over and over and then land some poke when they finally contest. Able to kind of have really nice control around that. Did not get a kill, but still.
Yeah, but they did use the Zeri ulti here, so now they have to wait for the next Zeri ult. You don't want to fight without Zeri ult, so I guess there's going to be a bit of dead time right now. Maybe C9 will try to force something, knowing they don't have Zeri ult.
Trigger the Baron with the stack minion.
Yeah.
Looking for it for a moment. I mean, Blaber just trying to match there against Contractz. But yes, no Zeri ultimate for a little bit of time for the CLG side.
How do you feel in these positions as a CLG, where the enemy team's sitting on Soul Point? Do you feel pressed to make things happen outside the window of the Dragon, or are you okay kind of waiting for Dragon and just having to keep outplaying them time and time again?
It's very hard for them to accelerate the game without fighting over the objectives. They could try to start the Baron like they were doing, but it wasn't really possible, so you kind of just have to wait for the Dragon. But if you do have the setup and you're first at the Dragon, you don't really mind too much that they have the Soul Point. If they come in first, though, and they have the setup, then it's very difficult. But since they're in the driver's seat right now, they should be able to just set up around the next Dragon when it comes up here soon. And honestly, they're in a pretty good spot now.
Yeah, I always get a little concerned when one team's on Soul Point. It's like just one thing needs to go wrong, one flip, one smite steal, and suddenly they have just shields for the rest of the game. They have some people who actually do itemized defensive stuff, so EMENES would be super happy if he got Soul out of nowhere. So it's something where I can see why CLG is starting this Baron. It initially, to me, seemed very risky, but from this perspective, I definitely see pushing. And then the poke has been underrated. They've been able to chunk people out consistently. Even EMENES, who is the tankiest member in the game, got forced back in that last kind of standoff situation.
Now, 32 minutes into the game, 1.5k gold lead for CLG, ripping away the stacking of the Dragons and bringing some more control into their favor when it didn't seem like that long ago, Jensen, that it seemed like there was a lot of pressure that was being put by Cloud9 when they just had the item advantage. Now you feel like it's a bit more evened out?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought it would be a lot harder for CLG, but they've been very good at starting these fights. And speaking of fighting, just a little
unstoppable bait, gets the face check brush as long as you start channeling that W beforehand. A-okay for EMENES there. Does buy the space potentially for C9 to break the turret right before this Baron or Dragon fight, excuse me. So that's a huge win.
10 seconds on that spawn timer, so breaking into that mid to match that mid turret that was previously taken by CLG. Seeing who can get the ward coverage here first. And I know, Jensen, you're looking at Fudge in this next fight, right? Seeing what Fudge can be able to do for Cloud9?
Yeah, I think it's very crucial that Fudge is able to find a flank here and get onto the back line, because it's going to be very tough for them if they just let CLG poke them out again.
Blaber. It's Blaber that's looking for the flank on this angle and gets zoned out, flashes away into the pit. He goes. Dhokla ready to collapse as well as Luger. The culling coming out from Berserker and lands a lot of it onto Luger. So now, with less HP to his name, has to position a bit more safely. Palafox wanting to zone. Contractz has made his way with the rest of the CLG squad so that nobody can get picked out. The song and dance is at it again. The Dragon now below 4,000. Needlework slicing through Blaber, and EMENES taking a lot of damage as well. Fudge coming on board with the slicing maelstrom. There's the Dragon. CLG secures it with the wild growth upon Luger. CLG are in the driver's seat of the fight. Going on in, getting the shutdown. The action of Palafox, zone up, and all the way on the wayside. C9 falling 1-5-1. CLG, a triple for Palafox, and the ace for the team.
Luger is a madman going into the Dragon Pit by himself multiple times in a row. Baits C9 into a straight up engage. It's a 5-for-0 clean ace for CLG. They want to end the game.
They're going for it. They're hitting the go button onto the turret and more.
Honestly, I'm super surprised they were able to win that fight. Luger got poked down to like, what, 30-40% health? Yeah. They just managed to win it.
It was enough. CLG coming in the clutch in game number 2.
Absolutely incredible end to the game. It was a slow mid-game for a moment there, but when it came to the Dragon fight, CLG just super impressive how they executed them, going aggressive, baiting C9 in, and making sure that they never actually got fully engaged on.
Yeah, I mean, I was praising Fudge and saying he was playing very well, but they did end up losing, so I guess
The caster curse came through. There you
real.
go. I gotta say, this is a very interesting series from here because I think I predicted a C9 3-0. I think a lot of people were predicting a C9 3-0. What are you looking at now? The fact that CLG has bounced back and in the mid to late game has not looked like a complete pushover against this team.
I mean, I predicted C9 to 3-0 as well, but I know CLG, when they start fighting, it's going to be very scrappy and it's going to be some banger games. So, I mean, they show they're up for the task and they can definitely do it.
Do you see any similarities between this series you played against them in summer last split and now this one again where it's like, uh-oh, all of a sudden this game's getting scrappy?
Yeah, this is why I hate playing against CLG because you never really know what to expect. Like, you feel like, oh, it's going to be a free win, but they always show up with like these random things and they somehow always make it work.
Oh, man. I mean, that definitely gets me excited for the rest of the series. Jensen, you're hanging out with us for the rest of the day. So you thinking that you're going to be here for a long time?
I think I'm going to be here for all 5 games, yeah.
Oh, boy.
All 5 games. That's what we're all hoping for. Remember, everyone that's watching at home, though, the LCS team emotes are now live in the client. Look, I've got a nice little example here. This design right now from Cloud9 that you see on your screen. I'm going to put it as if you're in the game and I'm emoting above you. So grab yours now, spam in the chat whoever you think is going to win game 3, and we will see you later here on the desk. For now, it's time to